Well, good evening. This is Jason Lee. My presentation is about why being a vulnerable father is important. So, I'm gonna basically speak a little briefly about vulnerability and being a parent, and how a lot of times, even with fathers, it is a little bit tougher for us to do. I'm also a father myself. Um, but let's also just speak real briefly about what being vulnerable even means to a person. So, what being vulnerable means to be susceptible to physical or emotional attack or harm. So, let me talk about that real quickly. A lot of times with men, we have grown up to kind of have this thing to where when you are a boy, you have always been taught to maybe you hurt yourself, maybe you've fallen down off your bike, and then you start to cry. And then you may have like, hey man, toughen up. Like, what are you crying for? I used to hear that a lot from my dad, also from my brothers and my brother's friends, and that type of thing like that. And then he would tell you, hey, you gotta be tough, man. Suck that crying up. Get on the football field. Once I play football, you get hit so hard sometimes you want to cry. And you hear the coach, man, you better come on, stuff like that. That as a man, that you keep that within you for a very long time. And that even kind of goes into fatherhood. How you were raised as a child can easily be transferred into your adulthood. And when you become a father, a husband, or anything of that nature yourself in the future. So let's kind of talk about a little bit of where I come from and where I've kind of gotten my vulnerability from. This is my dad, Robert Lee. If he saw me put this picture on here and spoke about him, he hates taking pictures, he'd probably go ahead and be so mad at me, but I'm going to talk about him anyway. He's not here to know. So this is my father, Robert Lee. He was born in the Deep South, Eudora, Arkansas, 1952. He had 15 siblings, and he's the second to the youngest of the family. And here's also my grandmother, my grandma Bessie. She was born in 1929. She died in 1968. And this is my father's father, my grandpa Jordan. And he was born in 1900 and he died in 1962. So, my dad, he pretty much was raised by his brothers and sisters his childhood. His father died when he was very young, as you can see. So a lot of times, I think a lot of his being vulnerable to us was kind of a challenge. He didn't necessarily know how to do it. He didn't know how to be vulnerable because he didn't really have his father in his life in that type of way. He passed away at a very young age again. So he had numerous brothers that would take care of him, brothers and sisters. But when you're a brother, you have a different love for your son, for a child, for your brother, than as you would for the father of your child. It's a live different love. Same thing with a mother and a son. Same thing with a father and a son. It's going to be the same way for a brother and a son. And I think that's also the other reason what happened. Now this is us. This is my youngest brother Jamar, my oldest brother James, and here's me. Now, I'm not bad. So the funny thing is about that thing, my cousin went on ahead and put that down because she just thought that was just so funny. So I really wanted to go ahead and put this picture on here because I wasn't the bad one out of the family. But therefore, she likes to kind of say that. Ha ha ha. So let's talk about vulnerability. As you can see in here, let's read this one. Vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up, be seen when we have no control over the outcome. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is our greatest measure of courage. It took me a very long time to be able to even see. Let me get something real straight about my dad. Let me kind of resort back for a quick second. My dad was a very hardworking, funny guy. Funny. But when it came to showing his emotions past that, if he was hurting, something was bothering him, past things that may have made him feel sad and that type of nature, you would never know. You would never know. And I think after a while that kind of ate at him. And that can eat at anybody. That can eat at your mind. That can eat at your soul. You could not feel free. So it is very tough for anyone to come out and feel their complete self. Now, the reason why I wanted to show this picture, this is, as we know, Vladimir Putin. Around the world, he's almost known as the guy who is the most emotionless man of all time, as you can see. And Russians also have that whole persona of them being emotionless. But what is that right there? He's crying. Everybody, no one can be emotionless. Everybody is not a robot. Nobody is not a robot. There's going to come a time to where you are going to break down. And I think the best way to show that is within your children. Show them that things hurt you too. That sometimes you don't have it all. And sometimes even the best answers can come through your children. I remember the first time I ever seen my father cry. I only saw my father cry twice. And a lot of times as a father, you're not going to cry in front of your children because you want to look like you always have it together. But that's not always going to be true. My dad cried for the first time I've ever seen him in church when one of our members turned out to be pregnant. And it baffled me that he was crying. I couldn't believe it. But that showed me that my dad can break down. And I kind of had a newfound respect for him after I've seen that. This is why being vulnerable in fatherhood is very important. This is kind of the disadvantages of when you hide your emotions. You might actually feel more shame. Shame in your past, even shame in the present. You're probably less likely to face and overcome your fears. And it adds to your anxiety. That's a big deal. Because once things add to your anxiety, anything, your health can just start to deteriorate. And why would you want that to happen? Why would you not want to be open to your children? The best at hiding emotions. Now, the reason why I put this down here, because this was very interesting. I saw this, and I read Scorpio, Capricorn, Virgo, Taurus, Aquarius, Gemini. What do you think my dad is? Aquarius. Isn't that funny? He's an Aquarius. So, that really struck me. Now, I happen to be a Virgo. The funny thing is about all of this is just the fact that I try to make sure that, and me and my brothers as well, that we do not follow in the same footsteps as how my father is without being unvulnerable to our children. And these are my brothers again, as we're all grown up. Now we have all of our own children. This is a very dear cousin of mine. He has his own children. This is my nephew, Little James. It's my other nephew, Anthony. He is also now a father, and we're teaching him that as well. This is also another picture of us as well, of how we would just want to be a symbolized version of how a father should be around their children. Eventually I had a child of my own, and one thing that really struck me with her, she's a really, really cool girl. One day she says to me, as she loves comic book heroes, loves them, will watch them all day long. She says to me, Dad, you're kind of like a superhero. She happened to be watching Spider-Man cry. She's like, you never cry. So why is he crying? You're kind of like a superhero. Now that made me feel good. But I told her, I said, baby, that's not true. Even superheroes cry. Even daddy cries. Everybody cries. Everybody has that emotion to eventually break down. And I think it's such an important thing to show that you can go ahead and be that open to your child. Being vulnerable, as you can see here by Bob Marley, is the only way to allow your heart to feel true pleasure. I think a lot of times once that happens, your kids will respect you more. I think that they will open up to you more. And that's just the best way to do it. Why not? It's a beautiful thing. You're not a robot, you're a human. So, with that being said, I'm vulnerable to one little girl. And I want to be as transparent to her as I can. And I think she enjoys that. She's seen me with tears. She's wiped my tears. She's heard me tell her how important she is to me. And how that, she makes me feel like a better person. And now I get to do this to a second little girl. And I can't wait. I think being a father is the best thing that can ever happen to a person. And I think being vulnerable, being as open like a book to your children is the best way to ever be. And that's the best way to be as when it comes to being a father. Thank you. You have a good night.